Hello there, GlenDronach of Whiskey Lore, and time for another whiskey tasting. And today, I'm actually wearing my Woodford Reserve tie because the Kentucky Derby is coming up this weekend. But not doing a bourbon today, although I am featuring the same company that makes Woodford Reserve, which is Brown-Forman, who owns GlenDronach. And I have to tell you, exciting news coming up next week for the interviews. On Monday, you are going to see a interview with Billy Walker. I actually had an opportunity to, Billy, if you don't know, I still have an old tin, GlenDronach, Billy Walker, who was master distiller, master blender for GlenDronach, owned it from about 2008 until it was sold out from under him in 2016, sadly, before he got an opportunity to show off his distilled spirits to the world on top of what he was blending up to that point. But he was a big reason that we got a 12, 15, and 18, and 21-year-old version of GlenDronach. I have to tell you, I had so prepared. I was so excited about this interview. I had much more than 2 pages worth of questions to ask. And I will never do this again. But as we were getting started with the interview, you know, I want to go through his whole career. And that's what I told them when I was doing my prep for this thing. But I said, how much time you got? I want to know if you're up against any time constraints. And Billy said, 15 minutes. Whoa! Here's a guy that has 2 hours worth of notes, and we're going to talk through your career. 50 years the guy's been in the business, from Hiram Walker all the way up to where he is now at GlenAllachie. And I'm like, 15 minutes. And a friend of mine said he knew why he said that. It's basically that you don't know this person from Adam that's going to be interviewing you. It's another press interview. And so if you say 15 minutes, you can cut away pretty early. Well, I got more than 15 minutes. 15 minutes, I was plowing through questions as quickly as I could. But then I just kind of relaxed after a little bit, and he was enjoying the conversation, and I was enjoying the conversation. So it ended up going about 45 minutes. So it's going to be a great conversation. We're going to learn a lot. There were some great distilleries that he was involved in even before those 3 great whiskeys that ended up going over to Brown-Forman, the GlenDronach, the Glenglassaugh, and the Ben-Riach. And now GlenAllachie we talk about, but also Tobermory and Deanston he was involved in. And then we go back and talk about some old blends that he worked on as well. So that is coming up next week for interviews, so stay tuned for that. In honor of that, I'm excited, so I'm like, okay, let me do a tasting of this 15-year GlenDronach, because this is an interesting whiskey for me, because I would say this is probably one of the best whiskeys that I've ever tasted. However, when I put it up against 12, if I drink this and 12 at the same time, oddly, I tend to prefer the 12. And I think the reason I like the 12 is because when you drink them side by side, I tend to pick up more of the wood notes in this. And so I appreciate more of the fruitiness coming from the other. Interesting thing about this, though, is that this whiskey's likely evolved a little bit because they were using some older expressions. This bottle is from 2019, so it's likely there's a little bit more in terms of older expressions in here. Potentially, the distillery was mothballed between 1996 and 2002, and so there was this thing at one time where if you bought a 15-year, you were likely getting an 18-year or older, because they didn't have stocks that were 15 years old. And the rule is, youngest whiskey in the bottle, that's what the age statement can be, but nothing higher than that. So I have had this bottle for a while. As you can tell, I have nursed this bottle because I really enjoy this whiskey. And this whiskey will probably now, I think, set you back about $100 a bottle, but still, and just by nosing it, I remember what I love about this whiskey. there's a lot of diversity in the nose on this whiskey, and so it's nice to get those little wood spice notes in there. But there's a lot of fruit in here. It's a mixture of PX and Oloroso, and that's one of the things that I talked to Billy about as well as this idea that they've pulled the non-8 or the non-chill filtered from the bottle. Of course, in my interview with Rory Glasgow from Brown-Forman, he said that is just because they don't want to get caught lying if in a case of a particular barrel they find they need to filter it. They aren't filtering all of it. And I will say, it would make sense that they're not filtering this whiskey unless they absolutely have to, because it is 46% ABV, which means it shouldn't be getting the cloudy issue. And so there's really not a good reason for them to be doing filtering on any of this whiskey. But I don't know. We'll take that for what it is. I have a good palate. I don't know if my palate could discern the difference. Maybe, maybe not. If you have a blend of 35 barrels in there and one barrel has been filtered, I don't think I'm going to be able to tell the difference. So hopefully they are holding to their word on that. So I get out of this a lot of citrus, orangey citrus that comes out of the nose on this one. There's a nice little almond / hazelnut note that comes in as well. I say nice, I'm not a big fan of hazelnut, but I think it's kind of tempered a bit. So I sense it more in that almond kind of a category. There's a peachiness to this also, which I find kind of interesting. This is one of the few whiskeys I've had where they've taken the time on the back of the label to give their nosing and tasting notes. They say maraschino cherry. I don't necessarily pick that up. And usually once somebody says something and I nose, if it's there, I'm going to pick it up. But I'm not really picking that up in here too much. Cheers. Really nice mouthfeel. Gosh, what is that flavor? There's a flavor that came through that I hate when that happens. It's like I really know what that is, but I don't. I can't put my finger on it. I almost want to go into like a sugared down rhubarb coming in there along with the fig, raisin. I love the blending of PX and Oloroso and how each one of them kind of highlights their strengths, but you don't get too much of a dark punch in the face and you don't get too much of a bright punch in the face. And this is so juicy. I mean, it is definitely very fruit forward. Maybe I'm getting a little skin of the apple in there. The citrus is still there as well. I don't necessarily get the chocolate notes so much. I get a little tobacco-y note in there as well on the finish, which I think that's also kind of coming in from the older barrels. Yeah, it's just, I mean, it dries a little bit towards the end, but it is definitely a fruit bomb, and a lot of those nice orchard fruits now starting to also hit. And I get a little bit of a toffee note in there as well, which is really nice. It's more in the coating probably than anything. Really enjoyed this whiskey. What do you think about it? Is GlenDronach 15 one of the best whiskeys out on the market? Or are there other whiskeys that you would prefer? And thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and leave me a like if you did, and subscribe if you want to watch more of these down the road. And until next time, cheers and Slainte. Maybe a little cinnamon in there too. Nice.